The shelf was the first thing I looked at, and I knew before anyone said a word. A small painted figure sat between a photograph and a candle. The family had stopped seeing it years ago. I had not stopped seeing things like it. I asked them how long it had been there, and the mother answered that it came from her grandmother and that no one remembered exactly when. That is the answer I hear most often. No one remembers. The object outlives the memory of why it was kept, and the family keeps it the way you keep a stone in your shoe because you have walked on it so long you call the limp your own gait. I did not touch it yet. I stood in that living room and let the house tell me what kind of quiet it was. There are two kinds of quiet in a home. One is rest. The other is the quiet of a room where something is being permitted, and no one has named it. This was the second kind. I had been called because the family could not sleep, because the children woke at the same hour, because the marriage had grown cold in a way the couple could not explain by ordinary failure. They thought they were inviting a priest to bless a house. They were inviting a priest to find a door. And there were three things in that home that could have been the door. By the end of the afternoon, I would know which one had been holding it open. My name is Chad Ripperger. I am a Catholic priest, and I have been trained formally in the ministry of exorcism. I do not say that to impress you. I say it so you understand the angle from which I am about to speak, because a man learns to see a room the way his work has taught him to see it. A physician walks into a house and notices the cough no one mentioned. I walk into a house and notice the shelf. For decades now, I have done this work in the confessional, in the deliverance ministry, and in the homes of ordinary people who are frightened and ashamed and do not know whom to call. The case I am going to tell you is a composite. I have stitched it together out of many homes, many families, so that no living person can be identified and no real address spoken. The pattern is true even when the people are not single people. I want to be careful with that, because this subject attracts liars and theatrics, and I have spent my life trying to be the opposite of both. So stay with me. I am going to walk you through one blessing, one house, room by room, and I am going to name the three kinds of object I always look for first. And I am going to tell you which of the three in this house was the one already letting them in. Let me take you in through the front door, the way I went in. The family met me on the step. A husband, a wife, two children who hung back behind their mother's leg the way children do when the air in their own house has taught them to be afraid. The wife had called, the husband had agreed, the way a man agrees to humor something he half believes, which is its own kind of opening, though not the one I was looking for. I asked them, before anything else, to tell me plainly what had been happening, and I asked them not to perform it. People want to perform these things. They have seen films. I told them I did not want the film. I wanted the boring version. The boring version is always more frightening because it is true. So they gave it to me. The children woke at 3 a.m, both of them in separate rooms on the same nights. The wife felt watched in the kitchen. The husband had begun to dream of a man standing at the foot of the bed who did not speak. None of this by itself means what people fear it means. I told them that plainly on the step before I crossed the threshold. Most disturbed sleep is disturbed sleep. Most cold marriages are cold for reasons a priest cannot bless away. I am not a man who sees a demon behind every draft. I have spent too long in this work to be that man. But I had come and I would look, and looking begins with the rooms. The living room first. I've told you about the shelf, the painted figure between the photograph and the candle. I want you to understand what I was. For 400 years, the church provided the laity with specific prayers to address situations in their homes that they could not explain. Most parishes stopped teaching them after 1965. Now, they have all been compiled into a concise, practical guide. Keep it near the door and read the first page tonight. You will find the link to get the book in the description and in the first pinned comment. I was actually doing as I stood there, because it was not superstition and it was not theatrics. I was reading the history of a family through its objects. A home is a confession in furniture. People keep what they keep for reasons, and the reasons are written into the placement. The figure sat at eye level in the center of the room where the family gathered. That is the place of honor. You do not put a thing you have forgotten in the place of honor. The forgetting is real, but the honor is older than the forgetting, and the honor is what mattered. I asked the wife to take it down and tell me everything she knew. She said her grandmother had brought it from another country. She said her grandmother had been, in her words, a woman who knew things. People say that about their grandmothers in a particular tone, and I have learned that tone. It means the grandmother told fortunes, or read cards, or kept a practice the family was proud of and ashamed of at the same time. The figure was the grandmother's. It had been, the wife thought, something the grandmother used. Used for what, she did not know. That is the first kind of object, and I will come back to it. An item dedicated to or acquired through a practice that is not from God. We went to the kitchen. The wife had said she felt watched there, and I wanted to see why. Kitchens are honest rooms. People do not decorate them with meaning. But on the windowsill there was a small dish of stones, and the wife told me, when I asked, that a friend had given them to her for energy. She said the word and then looked at me to see whether I would be angry. I was not angry at her. I am rarely angry at the people. I asked her what the friend had said the stones would do, and she repeated it the way you repeat something you half believe, because believing it cost nothing, and the friend was kind. The stones would protect the home. The stones would balance the energy of the rooms. I did not lecture her in that kitchen. There is a time for the doctrine, and it was not yet. I only asked her to set the stones aside in a separate place, and not to throw them out until I had seen the rest. Because here is what I was beginning to assemble room by room, the way you assemble a face out of a crowd. There was more than one thing in this house. There is almost always more than one thing. Doors do not come singly. A house that has admitted one practice has usually softened toward others, because the people in it have stopped asking the question that keeps a home closed. The question is simple. Where did this come from, and to whom does it belong? We climbed the stairs. The children's rooms were ordinary, and I want to say that plainly, because part of this work is refusing to find what is not there. There was nothing in the children's rooms but the ordinary clutter of childhood, and the fact that they woke at 3. I will hold that fact and come back to it. The marriage bedroom was next, and the husband followed me to the door, but would not come in, and I noticed that, and I have learned to notice when a man will not enter the room where he dreams of the figure at the foot of the bed. On the wife's side of the bed, there was a drawer, and in the drawer, when I asked her to open it, there was a deck, cards, not playing cards. The wife flushed and said they had been a gift, and that she only used them sometimes for fun when friends came, and that she did not really believe in them. I have heard that sentence 10,000 times. I do not really believe in them. The not believing is offered as a defense, and it is the opposite of... St. Thomas Aquinas wrote more than a dozen questions on how fallen angels operate. Most Catholics have never read one line of it. This archive gathers that teaching, the 1,614 rite, and 4 centuries of documented cases into a single reference. Read it slowly, 1 chapter a night. You will find the link to get the book in the description and in the first posted comment of a defense. The not believing is the proof that the door was opened casually, which is the most dangerous way to open it, because a thing done casually is a thing done without guard. So now I had 3, the figure of the grandmother in the living room, the stones on the kitchen windowsill, the deck of cards in the drawer beside the bed. 3 objects, 3 doors, and the family had been living among all 3 and sleeping badly and growing cold and waking at 3 in the morning. And they had called me to bless the house as though the house were the problem. The house was not the problem. I went back downstairs and I sat with them, and I told them it was time for me to explain what I actually believed was happening, because they could not consent to a remedy they did not understand. And that is the part I want to give you now, carefully, because the doctrine is the spine of all of this, and without it, the rest is theater. Let me tell you what an object is and what it is not, because the entire subject is poisoned by a false picture. And the false picture comes from films. People believe that an object can be haunted the way a battery is charged. They believe that evil is a kind of physics, that it soaks into wood or stone or paper and radiates out like heat from a stove. That is not the teaching, and it has never been the teaching. A thing made of wood is wood. A deck of cards is paper and ink. The stones on the windowsill are stones. There is no energy in them, malign or otherwise, because they are matter, and matter does not love and does not hate and cannot intend. So, when I tell you to remove these things from your home, I am not telling you they are batteries of evil. I want to be exact, because the truth is more serious than the superstition, and people reach for the superstition because it asks less of them. The danger in the object is not in the matter. The danger is in what the object is bound to. And to understand that, you have to understand what a demon is. And here I lean on the master, on Thomas Aquinas, who thought about these creatures more clearly than any man before or since. In the first part of his great work, in the Questions on the Angels, Aquinas teaches that the angels are pure spirits, intellects without bodies, and that a demon is a fallen angel and keeps the nature of an angel even in its ruin. Keep that in front of you. A demon is an intellect. It is a mind without a body, and it is a mind of terrible power, far above the human mind in its reach and its speed, because it does not reason step by step the way we do, plodding from one thought to the next. It sees. Aquinas teaches that the angelic intellect grasps things whole, all at once, the way you grasp a single word and not letter by letter. Now hold that against the picture of the haunted battery, and you will see why the battery is a child's idea. A demon is not a force in a stone. A demon is a person, a wrecked and hateful person of immense intelligence, and that person, like any person, acts for reasons and according to permissions. It does not go where it likes. It is not omnipotent, and it is not free in the way God is free. It works within a law, because all of creation is under law. Even the rebellion against God is under law. And this is the thing that the films never tell you, and the thing that should give you hope, even as it sobers you. The demonic operates by right. It enters where it has been given an opening, and it stays where the opening is not closed, and it is driven out when the right is revoked. That is the whole architecture, right? Opening, permission, and the revoking of permission. And an object enters this architecture not as a battery, but as a deed of property, as a sign that a permission has been granted. Here is how the object becomes a door. When a thing is dedicated to the occult, when it is made for divination or consecrated to a false god or used in a practice that reaches for power outside of God, an act of the will has occurred. Someone has turned with intention away from God and towards something else, and has marked that turning with the object. The object is not the evil. The turning is the evil, the sin is the evil, but the object is the standing sign of it, the way a flag is not the country but marks the claim. The grandmother who used the figure did not charge it with energy. She made with her acts a dedication. She said with her practice, in effect, "This is mine, and I give it to that which I serve." And the dedication is a kind of legal fact in the order of spirits, a claim staked, and the object is the marker on the claim. And as long as the marker stands in the home and is honored, even honored in forgetting, the claim is not renounced. This is why removal matters. This is why I do not simply pray over the thing and leave it on the shelf. The removal and the destruction of the object is the visible renouncing of the claim. It is the family saying with their hands and not only their lips, "We do not consent to this, it does not belong here, we give it back to no one, and we give ourselves to God." The matter was never the problem. The consent was the problem, and the object was the consent made visible, and so the object must go. Scripture is not quiet on this. It is not a development of later piety. It is in the law itself, in the book of Deuteronomy in the 18th chapter, where God speaks to a people about to enter a land full of these practices, and the command is plain. "There shall not be found among you anyone who uses divination, or a soothsayer, or one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer, or one who casts spells, or who consults a medium, or a spiritist, or who calls up the dead." Read the list slowly, because every item on it is alive in our own time, dressed in softer clothes. Divination is the reading of cards on the wife's side of the bed. The casting of spells is the dish of stones for energy on the windowsill. The consulting of the dead is the figure of the grandmother who knew things. The law did not forbid these because God is jealous of fortune tellers. The law forbade them because they are doors, because they are the turning of the creature toward powers that hate the creature, and a loving father forbids his children the open flame. The prohibition is mercy. People read it as a list of arbitrary rules, and it is the opposite. It is a father pulling his child back from the well. And the church has always known what to do with the objects, because the early Christians knew. There is a scene in the book of Acts, in the 19th chapter, in the great pagan city of Ephesus, where the word of God had begun to spread and people who had practiced magic came to believe. And Scripture tells us what they did. They did not put their scrolls in a cupboard. They did not sell them to recover their value. A number of those who had practiced magic arts brought their books together and burned them in the sight of all. And the text even counts the cost of what was burned, 50,000 pieces of silver, an enormous sum. A fortune turned to ash in public. That is the pattern. Not concealment, not resale, not a quiet setting aside, destruction and destruction in the open. As a renouncing, the first Christians understood in their bones what I have spent a career trying to explain to frightened families in their living rooms. You do not keep the instruments of the thing you have renounced, you burn them. You make the renouncing as public and as final as the dedication once was, and you do not count the cost. This is not a private opinion of mine, and it is not a recent invention. The church gathered her practice into a book, the Rituale Romanum, promulgated in 1614, the ritual that governs blessings and the rite of exorcism. And within that tradition, the blessing of a home and the renunciation of the works of the enemy stand side by side. Because the church has always treated the home as a place that can be claimed or freed. I have taught for years that the home is not neutral ground. It is either consecrated or it is contested. There is no third condition. A house where God is honored, where the sacraments are lived, where the objects on the shelves belong to Christ and to his mother and to the saints, is a house with the door shut. A house where the question has never been asked, where the grandmother's figure sits in the place of honor and the cards wait in the drawer and the stones balance the energy of the kitchen, is a house with the door ajar. And the creatures Aquinas described, those intellects of immense and patient hatred, do not need the door flung wide. Ajar is enough. They have all the time there is. So I sat with that family and I told them all of this in plainer words than I am using with you. And the husband who would not enter the bedroom listened with his head down, and the wife held the deck of cards in her lap. And I told them that one of these three things in their house was not merely a door left ajar. One of them was being actively used and was holding the door open from the inside. And then I told them which. It was the cards. I want to tell you how I knew, because the knowing is not magic and you should not think it is. The figure of the grandmother was old, and it was a dedication, and it had to go, but it was a closed door more than an open one. The dedication had been made by a woman now dead, and the family honored the object in forgetting, which is real, but forgetting is a weak consent, a door pulled almost to. The stones were the same, a casual thing taken on a friend's word, a door touched but not yet walked through, because the wife did not truly pray to them, she only kept them. But the cards were being used. The wife used them, in her words, sometimes, for fun, when friends came, and that present tense use was the living consent, renewed, again and again, every time her hands turned them. The grandmother's dedication was a flag planted long ago by a dead hand. The cards were a flag the wife was raising herself with her own hands in the present, in the room where she slept beside her husband. And that is why the husband dreamed of the figure at the foot of the bed and would not enter the room. And that is why the watching in the kitchen and the children waking at 3. The active door was the one being held open from the inside by a living will, casually, for fun, by a woman who did not really believe in them. The not believing did not close the door. The using held it open. And so the cards were the thing already letting them in. I asked her to give them to me. There is always a moment of resistance, and I have learned not to rush it because the giving has to be hers. She held them a long time. She said again that they were only a gift, that she did not really believe. And I told her gently that the not believing was exactly the problem, that a thing done lightly is a thing done without a guard, and that I was not asking her to believe in the cards, I was asking her to renounce them. And then she gave them to me. We did not put them in a drawer. We did not leave the figure on the shelf or the stones on the sill. The husband built a small fire in the grate, and one by one, in the sight of the whole family, the way the Ephesians burned their scrolls, those three objects were destroyed. And as they burned, I led the family in a renunciation, the renouncing of the works and the empty promises of the enemy, the same renunciation the church places on the lips of every person at baptism. And then I blessed the house. Not as a formality, room by room, with holy water that had been blessed, with the prayers the church gives for exactly this. I went through every room they had walked me through, the living room where the figure had sat in the place of honor, the kitchen where she had felt watched, the bedroom the husband would not enter, the children's rooms where they woke at 3. And in each room I asked Christ to take back what was his. I will tell you what changed, and I will tell you honestly, because the honesty is the only thing in this work worth anything. It was not a thunderclap. Films have taught people to expect a thunderclap, a scream, a slamming door. And when the thunderclap does not come, they think nothing happened. Something happened. The children slept through the night, that night, both of them. And the wife told me weeks later that the kitchen had become a kitchen again. Just a room, just the place where she made the meals, and that the sensation of being watched had not returned. The husband stopped dreaming of the figure at the foot of the bed. None of this is spectacular, and all of it is real, and the realness is in the ordinariness, in the return of the boring, in a house becoming quiet with the first kind of quiet, the quiet of rest, instead of the second kind, the quiet of something being permitted. I am not telling you that every cold marriage hides a deck of cards, or that every child who wakes at night is besieged by a fallen angel. I have said this, and I will keep saying it, because the lie in both directions is dangerous. The lie that says it is never the demonic, and the lie that says it is always the demonic. What I am telling you is that this family had, without knowing it, left a door open and held it open, and that when the door was shut by removal and renunciation and blessing, the house changed. What you do with that is your decision before God. So let me turn from their house to yours, because you did not come here for a story alone, and the story is useless if it stays a story. If a thing in your home can be a door, then the question becomes how a home is shut and kept shut, and the answer is not primarily about objects at all. The objects are the visible part, the part you can carry to the fire, but the shutting of a home is done by the things the church has given for exactly this, and they are not techniques and they are not charms. They are the points where heaven touches earth, and I want to name them plainly. First among them is the Eucharist, the body and blood of Christ, truly present, not a symbol, not a reminder, but the Lord himself under the appearance of bread, and a soul in the state of grace that receives him worthily is a soul in which God dwells. And where God dwells, the enemy has no standing. This is the center. Everything else circles it. A home of people who receive the Eucharist worthily is a home with a fire in its heart that the cold cannot survive near. And worthily means something, which brings me to confession. And I want you to hear what Christ himself said, because people imagine the confessional is a human invention, and it is not. On the night of his resurrection, he breathed on the apostles and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit, whose sins you forgive are forgiven them, and whose sins you retain are retained." That is in the 20th chapter of John. He gave men the power to forgive sins in his name, and the confessional is where that power is exercised. And it is also, I will tell you, from a lifetime of hearing confessions, the single most underused weapon in the spiritual life. When a person confesses, the involvement, the cards, the seance, the dabbling that they did for fun and did not really believe in, when they name it and renounce it and receive absolution, a claim is broken at its root. Because the sin that staked the claim is washed away. The object goes to the fire, the sin goes to the confessional. Both must happen. I have seen families remove every object and remain afflicted because the sin had never been confessed, the consent had never been verbally and sacramentally withdrawn before God, and I have seen the affliction lift the week the confession was made. Do not separate the two. The hand carries the object to the flame, and the soul carries the sin to the priest. Then the sacramentals, which are not the sacraments, but flow from the church's blessing and carry her prayer, holy water, blessed by a priest, is not a magic liquid. And I have already warned you against the magical picture. But it is the church praying. It is water over which the church has invoked God's protection against the enemy. And to sprinkle your home with it is to ask, with the whole weight of the church behind the asking, that God guard these rooms. A crucifix, blessed, hung where the family can see it, is not a decoration and not a good luck charm. It is the standing sign that this house belongs to the crucified, that the claim has been staked the other way, that where the grandmother's figure once sat in the place of honor, the Lord now hangs in the place of honor. An image of Our Lady in the home places the family under the protection of the woman whose heel crushes the serpent's head. These are not superstitions to be set against the superstition of the stones. They are the opposite of superstition. The stones claimed a power that was not there. The sacramentals carry a prayer that is real, the prayer of the church, which is the prayer of Christ in his body. Fill the home with these, and the home is not neutral ground any longer. It is consecrated ground, and the door is shut. Now, I have to tell you why all of this is happening now, in our own time. Because you feel it, even if you cannot name it, and you deserve more than a story and a remedy. You deserve to understand the season you are living in. The infrastructure of protection that I have just described to you, the confession that breaks the claim, the home blessing that consecrates the rooms, the sacramentals that fill the house, the daily prayer that keeps the door shut, all of it was once ordinary. It was the water Catholics swam in. A century ago, a Catholic home was blessed as a matter of course. Holy water sat by the door. The family said the rosary together at night. The children were taught the names of these dangers before they could spell them, and the practices of divination were spoken of, when they were spoken of, as the open flame they are. That world has been dismantled. I am not going to be coy about when. In the years after the Second Vatican Council, which met from 1962 to 1965, a catechetical collapse occurred. And I choose those words carefully, and I will not blame the council itself. But in the decades that followed, a generation was raised that was not taught. They were not taught what the Eucharist is. They were not taught what confession does. They were not taught that the home could be blessed or that it needed to be. The home blessing fell out of use. The lines for confession emptied. An entire architecture of protection that had stood for centuries was quietly let go, not by decree, but by neglect, the way a family forgets why the figure is on the shelf. And at the very same hour that the protection was being forgotten, the occult was being normalized. I have watched this across my lifetime. What was once found in the back of a strange shop is now sold in every bookstore and to every child. Divination is marketed as wellness. The reading of cards is a thing friends do at a party for fun, the wife's exact words, and no one teaches them otherwise because the ones who should teach them were never taught. The stones for energy are sold beside the candles. The seance has become an evening's entertainment. The enemy did not need to invent anything new. He needed only the two things to happen together, the protection forgotten and the practice normalized, the door left unlocked in the same generation that decided locks were primitive. This is the thesis I keep returning to, and I will say it again because it is the key to the whole season. The enemy has stopped hiding, not because he has grown stronger, but because the infrastructure that once held him back has been dismantled in the West. And he is simply walking through doors that no one is guarding anymore. I am not telling you the world has been handed over to the demonic or that the church has failed and the night has won. What I am telling you is that the locks were taken off the doors in living memory within the span of one human life, and that the locks can be put back by you in your own home this week. What you do with that is your decision before God. So, let me be practical, because hope that does not become action is only a feeling, and I did not come to give you a feeling. Here's what I want you to do, and I want you to do it in order. This week, before anything else, walk through your home the way I walked through theirs, room by room, and take an honest inventory. Look at the shelves in the place of honor. Look in the drawers beside the bed. Look at the windowsills and the gifts from kind friends. Ask of every object the question that keeps a home closed. Where did this come from, and to whom does it belong?